Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, as we navigate the space of US defaultism, where Americans obviously go on the internet and assume that everything is related to America, everything, no matter what it is, we have found even more posts revealing and exposing more people on the internet from America. You guys gave me a lot of interesting stories as well, so we're gonna go ahead and start with that. But before we get started, go ahead and make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So this one's actually from one of you guys. And it's funny because it says, one of my favorite phrases is, you speak English because it's the only language you know. And I speak English because it's the only language you know. And that's crazy because most of the time that is pretty true, especially when it comes to a lot of Americans traveling across the world and whatnot. And, you know, let's say for me, for instance, right? I went to Germany. I was practicing my German before I went to Germany. But when I got to Germany, I'm like, man, I defaulted to English, even though sometimes I tried to speak some German and whatnot. It was so abominable. People are like, let's just speak English instead, since you obviously can only navigate English, which was fine. Obviously with Germans, it's interesting because they pride themselves in efficiency, and it was more efficient to communicate for me in English, obviously, and Germans are very good at English and obviously German. For me, it was a guttural punch because I was trying to speak German, but I get and I understand why I found myself in the situation I found myself in. But this next comment from one of you guys actually says, a couple of years ago, I was visiting Westminster Abbey in London. In case you don't know, it's where a lot of Britain's great and good are buried, including kings, poets, heroes, and the tomb of the unknown warrior. An American woman asked the tour guide, is Bob Dylan buried here? Huh? Child, what? The guide quickly replied, no ma'am, he's still alive. Oh my God. He's 83 years old and from Duluth, Minnesota. Yeah, that's in the United States. I digress. Let's move to the next comment one of you guys put in the comment section of my last video. My favorite was an American exchange student in the 2010s. He seemed genuinely surprised that Germany did not look bombed out all over and that we actually have drinkable tap water everywhere. Turns out he only ever heard about Germany in regards to World War II and assumed we just kind of stopped doing anything after that. That is a very common misconception in America. A lot of Americans think that Germany is still toe up from the flow up from World War II. A lot of Americans also like to throw in a lot of people's faces worldwide, but specifically the Germans, that we are back-to-back World War champs. You will hear that and you will see it all over social media. You'll hear it from a few Americans in person, and it is mildly infuriating. Lots of interesting comments here and I love it. So if you do have an experience of one of us Americans saying some crazy things, please load up the comment section with your stories. I enjoy reading through them. They are very entertaining. But we do have a post that reflects some crazy defaultism, and I want to get to that as soon as humanly possible. So here it is. American from open carry state thinks that he can open carry knife in the UK. It's actually interesting to keep seeing Americans not doing their research before they travel overseas. How many times do I have to iterate this for anybody watching this video, by the way? When you travel, my Americans, when you travel overseas, do your research into the country you're traveling to, what you are and what you are not allowed to do, so you prevent yourself from becoming part of an international incident. That is huge, okay? Make sure you do that. Also, it just makes your experience a lot easier because there are things that you will need to bring with you. There are things that you cannot bring with you when traveling to other countries. So do your research. Thank you. Anyways, this title right here comes from the Independent newsletter, and it says, US tourist arrested in seaside town because he didn't understand UK laws. And underneath that it says, holiday maker reportedly from an open carry US state had UK weapons laws explained to him by officers. Now, obviously the comment section had a lot to say about this, so our first comment actually said, who does he have beef with? Seagulls? That's what I'm saying, bro. Why was he strapped with a knife? This next comment actually says, and you just know that these people who feel the need to be armed everywhere they go are just paranoid suburbanites who have never faced any real threat and wouldn't actually be able to defend themselves if they really had to. And I cannot not agree more. Honestly, that comment hit the hammer on the nail, okay, when it comes to this kind of interaction. A lot of the people who are overprotective and who are like the gun owners and the doomsday preppers and stuff like that live in the suburbs, typically very isolated, and they feel like they have to be armed to the teeth only for them to A, not use their weapon very efficiently, or B, be very aggressive when it comes to handling weapons, but also C, they just genuinely don't ever really come in contact with a realistic threat that they're preparing for. And fear, I feel like, is one of the things that perpetuates a lot of the violence that we have in America. People are so scared. Now, I understand it is America, so it's not entirely unreasonable, but to the point that they create more danger because of their own fear. But this last comment actually says, for protection on the beach. What the fuck does he think is going to happen? Also, screw people listening to music without headphones. What? Okay, first of all, people who listen to music without headphones, if it's in an area like a beach, for instance, obviously I can see that. I do see lots of people do that, but I also agree to an extent. If you're listening to music, put your damn headphones in. We're not trying to hear all that. I will say this, as far as the other portion of this comment, why are you bringing a knife to the beach? Are you gutting a fish? We need to move on to this next post. Let's move on to this next post and show you guys what we're getting into. Insulin is the world's most expensive liquid, facepalm. And you'll understand why the facepalm is a thing very soon, because the post actually says, injecting the world's most expensive liquid just so I can eat a bagel. That is diabolical. Let's see what the comments had to say about this. This first comment actually says, at least this one's self-aware that something is wrong with the insulin being very expensive, unlike those who says drugs are expensive in the US because they subsidize Europe or something. Agreed. That is the first post in a while that I've seen an American acknowledge our stuff is very expensive. So let's go ahead and move on to the next comment. Anyone remember that story of the American who aged out of his parents' health care and couldn't afford his insulin? He had to ration the little amounts he could afford, but eventually died to it. This is the dystopia that Americans in poverty live in right now. When you look at the healthcare system in America and you look at how everything's structured, it's very infuriating and it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. As you've seen, we have perpetually dug our own graves, so it's bad. This next comment actually says, well, you can't blame her for that. It's their fucked up capitalistic system. True. So they're like, you know what? That's just the system. And unfortunately, people are taking advantage of it and causing more issues. So yeah, that's the current state of affairs, and we are going to move to the next post, which says, oh, you said it's different in your country. You must be from Mississippi. Let's look deeper into this post. All right, so this post has a thread, and we're gonna read through the thread. The top comment says, those tiny dots are eyes. Underneath that it says, what? And the comment underneath that says, do people not learn biology like in 6th grade anymore? This is middle school science. And it has 12 upvotes. The next comment says, no clue where you're from, but this wasn't in the curriculum in my country. And then underneath that, another user says, are you from Mississippi? ? And the user responds, I'm from Romania. I said in my country. Like, this is one of the dumbest cases of defaultism I've seen in a minute. The user clearly said in my country, and the responding user is like, you mean Mississippi? Are you from Mississippi? Is Mississippi a damn country? Shit, they probably feel like it at this point, but goddamn. The comment section was going crazy, as you could imagine, and our first comment actually says, but you have the Romanian flag in your profile picture. Yeah. I saw that too. Great bloody answer, original poster. Ah, yes. A nice splash of humor. He should have realized you aren't from the US at first glimpse because you wrote your instead of your. Wow. Well, yeah, I guess there's that too. These comments are crazy. This next post is diabolical, bro. This is funny. It says, I used to take advantage of US defaultism to annoy Americans, and the story had a bit of a surprise ending. Okay, I can't wait to hear this. What is it? From 2005 to 2012, I lived mostly in Beijing, and I had this extremely silly joke I like to play with Americans from the Northeast. Anybody who has been in an international community knows that people usually answer, where are you from, with their country, but people from the US always go straight with their state, which is kind of justifiable and kind of not, but let's not get into it. Most smart ones are pretty fast to introduce themselves as saying the US, but initially many don't. So every single time someone told me they were from Jersey, I would ask them if they knew my friend Daryl, which always got confused looks that said, does this idiot know how many millions of people there are in my state? Then I'd ask them, why did they have an American accent? They'd even be more confused and say, oh, you mean New Jersey? Yeah, lots of emphasis on the new. Many people, including myself, thought I was being obnoxious, but some actually laughed and said that it never occurred to them that if there was a new, there was probably an original one. We're getting somewhere with this post. We are getting somewhere with this post. But yeah, I had a friend from Jersey called Daryl Snow, who was a weatherman on China's English language TV station. Yes, that was, still is I hope, his name. Daz was a friend of a friend who became a friend. I found him very endearing and annoying at the same time, and he probably thought the same of me. You probably know where this is going. One day, I was hanging out with some new people. There were always new people at the brewery called Great Leap. What an interesting name. Great Leap. It was most likely a Sunday afternoon, and my English friend Dom introduced me to this crowd. Among them was a redhead girl who said she was from Jersey, and I thought this was too good an opportunity to pass, and I asked her if she knew my friend Daz. This guy's a troll. She said yes, and that her brother had gone to school with him or something, and that the island only had 3 high schools back in the late 90s. I was not expecting my question to be totally justified, but it became a nice memory. Wow, what an interesting twist. Turns out she actually knew, dude. That's insane. So our first comment from this post actually says, being from a small country, I'm used to being on the opposite end of this question, and it kills me that on more than one occasion when I lived in the UK, someone asked me if I knew someone who was also from New Zealand. And my answer was, no, we don't all know each other. Oh wait, no, I do know that person. Diabolical, because it's like, we don't know everybody over here. Just because I'm from London doesn't mean I know everybody from here. And then all of a sudden they name drop and you're like, actually, I do know that person. That's crazy. Has that ever happened to you guys before? Let me know in the comments down below, because that has happened to me. Like, oh, you're from Chicago, right? Oh, you must know this person. I'm like, dude, everybody in Chicago doesn't know each other. Wait a minute, hold on. I do know that person. That's insane. The next comment actually says, I've met Americans before, and when I say I'm from Jersey, some have said, oh, me too, until I clarify that I'm from the original. Yeah, you know, I also forgot that there is an original Jersey. I mean, that's why New Jersey, original Jersey, makes sense. Hold on, that means that there's an original York. Interesting. And this final comment actually says, that one's an interesting twist. I used to do something similar. Whenever someone from the US said that they were from Georgia, I'd ask them how Tbilisi, what the fuck is this?
Tbilisi.
I asked them how
Tbilisi
was like saying I wanted to vacation there one day. The shock of them going, what's
Tbilisi,
had me telling them that it's the capital of Georgia never gets old. Now, I don't even know if I pronounced that right, but that is funny. That is very funny. You would have got me. This next post, oh my goodness, says, bro doesn't understand how the internet works. And let's get into why the person who commented this on top of the post said this. How many people here are foreigners? It blows my mind that there are some Americans that think that Americans run the internet. I mean, that alone is insane to me. That is insane. So, of course, you have the first comment that says, ah, yes, the 2 types of people, Americans and foreigners. You might have caught me doing that a few times in these videos, and I do apologize. I do apologize. There was actually an individual that called me out, and I will admit my mistake. I messed up. I defaulted in one of my defaultism videos. I was talking about Americans when I was, mentioning Canada, and technically Canadians are Americans because they're a part of North America. I definitely got caught lacking with that one. He's also a foreigner, but to others, maybe he'll get to know that someday. I don't think he will. It'll go right over his head. But this next comment highlights something that I was thinking the entire time and that this commenter was actually talking about. And it's an image. And in this image, it shows foreign passports. And as you can see, the United States flag is there over foreign passports. Isn't that crazy? Because when you are in another country that is not America, Americans are the foreigners. Hard to believe, right? So we have another post on our fingertips, and it actually says, a classic one. Now, what might this commenter be referring to? Let's look at the post. This post comes from r/no stupid questions, and as you can imagine, it gets a little crazy. So it says, I talked to someone who was British and they talked about American accents. I corrected him and said that we don't have accents. Another friend further stated that we do in fact have accents, but I just don't understand how because I never talk British. Lord, 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 Lord. There are people like this in the world. There are actual people like this out in the world. I'm losing brain cells reading these, okay? I only have one left and it's on life support. So our first comment says, I'm Australian and live in Australia, but work for a US company. I quite often have to ring the US and speak to different people, and many times they say, I love your accent. And I usually reply, your accent's great too. Worryingly, they then always reply, but we don't have an accent. I honestly don't know if they're joking or not, and I'm too scared to ask and potentially offend them. Unfortunately, you might offend them if you do ask. So you did make the right call and just proceed with what you was doing in the first place. Oh my gosh, that is insane. The fact that most Americans don't realize they have accents is crazy, but it's funny because I was like that up until maybe a few years ago. I'm like, Americans having accents? Do it? Then you have comments like this that says, considering that accent is literally way of speaking of any determined culture, even one's not bound to geography, everyone who speaks has an accent, and to that I absolutely agree. Everyone has an accent. Whether you detect it or not, you have an accent. Now, there might be accents that stand out more than others, but every single person has an accent. A lot of people's accents are hybrid accents, so you can't pinpoint exactly where they're from. Some people you can, some people you can't. It just really depends. This next comment says, they simply do not understand that they aren't the default, and that depending on who you are interacting with, everyone has an accent. So we can all sum up the fact that no matter who you are, where you're from, you, yes you, me, yes me, we all have accents in some way, shape, or form. And that makes sense. I mean, obviously, right? It should be obvious, but unfortunately, it is not. Common sense is not common at all anymore. In fact, I feel like we can't even say common sense anymore because the world, at least in America, is on fire. And now we have another post that reflects a lot of defaultism, obviously, but in regards to US laws. And the top of this post says, of course US law applies everywhere. What are they talking about, you ask? Well, the post actually says, wait, they were all 18 drinking and the cops are okay with that? And then the reply is, this is the exact comment I've been looking for. Spot the American. That is one of the fastest ways you will spot us in the comment section. It is bait. Listen, if someone were to break into the house of an American to get them to reveal themselves from their hiding space, just be like, and I can't believe I am allotted the privilege to drink at 18. And you'll have every American in that motherfucker reveal themselves in a heartbeat and tell you simultaneously, you can't do that, you're not 21. All right, our first comment actually says, there are countries where you can drink at 18, others where you can drink at 16, and others where you can drink when your parents tell you to. I mean, the laws vary from country to country. It's not like you can invoke the American Fifth Amendment while in Peru. I 100% agree. You have to, again, be very mindful of the country's laws that you are traveling to, because you will be able to navigate the space far more efficiently if you do that. But a lot of people choose not to, and they find themselves in interesting debacles. All right, so this comment right here is interesting. It says, many years ago now, I decided to troll Americans by posting on Ask Reddit on my 21st birthday. Just turned 21, what should I do? I, of course, was met with a lot of, now that you can drink, or go get your first legal drink. You can bet your ass I had fun pointing out their false assumptions. Youth. So funny, because again, people default and be like,
oh my gosh, obviously you could have your first drink, you're 21.
Like, first drink? Realize I'm from Europe, right? Now, again, I do feel like they got to redo them laws in America when it comes to that, but the laws are in place for the reasons that be when it comes to the society and how it's structured and how it functions and whatnot. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think America could benefit from having a lower drinking age, or with the rampant use of weapons and stuff like that in America, do you think they need to keep it where it's at? You guys let me know in the comments down below, because I think that's a very valid question. Now, this last comment pertaining to this post says, if it was in America, one of the people would have pulled out a gun that they legally purchased while waiting for an adult to buy them beer. That's fact. That's facts. That is facts. Oh my gosh. You guys are cooking us in these comments, man. This next post over here is also very interesting. And this is something that is mildly infuriating. Now, this post says there is only one president. I think you know where this is going. So, reading it from the top, it says r/too afraid to ask. And it says, what is the procedure for evoking the 25th Amendment? Underneath it, it says the president's orders are becoming more and more absurd. When and how does the question of his capacity to function as a leader become challenged? And then underneath that, it says, in which country? It seems like there'd be a more focused sub on what would be more appropriate. And then the commentary is like, USA, obviously. Underneath that, it says, why would that be obvious? Why would that be obvious? So, of course, we had some comments that responded to this accordingly. And our first comment is, at least he answered with the name of the country and not a state. Hey, give credit where credit is due. So we'll take it. We'll take it. We will take that. Comment number 2 actually says, the US isn't the only country that hates its leaders. Ooh. I heard England going crazy right now with that too. Y'all are dunking on your leaders. And it's funny because I think that's also happening in Germany to an extent, kind of, but I don't know. I could be wrong. You guys let me know in the comments down below. The final comment we'll go over in this says, I mean, talking about the absurd orders from the president and invoking the 25th Amendment, which is about replacing a president, is fairly safe to assume it's the USA, but not obvious, especially in a sub for general questions, not a US sub. And for most people, including myself, would take some research on what the amendment is and looking at what other countries, India, Pakistan, as mentioned earlier, 25th Amendment is. Interesting point. I absolutely agree. With a little bit of research, it would have been easy to realize that is pertaining to America, but the person who posted this in a general sub probably should have posted this in a sub more dedicated to that. Okay, so anyways, we got some more posts to review. Let's go review them. The next post actually says, you are all American, right? Now, here, this is r/Twin Peaks. It's a Reddit thread for the show Twin Peaks, you know, great show. And it says you can watch all 3 seasons of Twin Peaks free on the Pluto TV app. And then underneath that post, it says, no, but maybe you can. And underneath that, the original poster is like, what do you mean? And then underneath that is that unfortunately I can't. It's only available in the US. People forget that streaming services are not available everywhere. I live in Korea, and unfortunately, that means that a lot of the streaming services that are very prevalent in the United States are not here unless I use a VPN. And this would be a very good point to plug in a VPN sponsor, but I don't do sponsors. So moving on to our first comment. They don't realize that many countries still don't have TV. We are still doing Punch and Judy behind curtains made of rags. What type of Flintstones ass shit is this, man? Oh man. Anyways, this next comment's interesting because it says 90% of you should know posts should be US defaultism posts, because that actually is fact. Like, you should know this already, obviously. Our next comment right here says, insert random VPN sponsor here. That is literally what I was just saying. Oh my God. This would be perfect to promote a VPN sponsor, but again, no sponsors here, man. You don't got to worry about that with me. Now, this next post actually says, Americans shocked a sub isn't American by default, thinks non-American subs should specifically explain that they're not American. Now, what is this person talking about? It says r/low stakes conspiracy. Title of this post says this is a British ruled subreddit. Underneath it says all the recommended communities are UK based and a lot of posts talk about the UK. Yet the subreddit is not specifically about the UK. This is a secret British sub that I stumbled upon on accident as an American. Edit. Or maybe something about the UK algorithm pushing this subreddit more. I spend a lot of time on Reddit and it's the first time I've ever come across this subreddit. Edit 2. I forgot I'm on a VPN. Sorry, I'm a little stoned. I was about to say some craziness, but I'm glad this individual checked himself, because good God, man, that weed was hitting, wasn't it? And of course, the comment section has some stuff to say, and the first comment is, a British ruled subreddit? The Empire Strikes Back. On accident. I'm dead. Oh man. And then of course we got our final comment here, which says, he doesn't say that though. He's shocked that it's mostly British people, not that it's not American. If I stumbled across a non-UK specific subreddit that had happened to be 99% British, I'd probably make the same post. Fair is fair. That might not be entirely US defaultism, but that person has a good point, brings a good point. You guys let me know in the comments down below if you agree. Let me know. Our next post starts with an interesting comment that says, of course an American could never be a foreigner. And this seems like it's from a Twitter thread. So the top comment actually says, if you're outside of the US, can you tell us what they are saying about us? And underneath that, it says, oh, the other thing. Almost every foreigner that I've met in the last 4 years since moving abroad has commented on how strange they find the LGBTQ and identity subject. Most other foreigners find it sickening that there is a choice on the matter, that kids were being taught about this in schools. And underneath that, it says, you moved abroad, but they're foreigners? Do Americans know what a foreigner is? Jesus Christ, yeah. Moving abroad to a country that is not your own and calling them foreigners is diabolical. And the first comment says, I wonder which country she's talking about and if she's not making it up. Of course, we got to move on to our next comment, which is, by foreigner, she means the local people of the country she moved to? And that's what I'm saying. I'm like, girl, what are you doing? I don't even think she realized what she did with that. You know what I mean? I don't think she looked too deeply into what she said, clearly, because she wouldn't have said it if she did. But this last comment here says, God damn, foreigners are everywhere for some reason. Oh my God. Imagine traveling to a different country. The first thing you do when you get off the plane, you're like, so many goddamn foreigners, I can't understand it. I'm the only local. But not as diabolical as this final post right here that leads with the title, Dime a Dozen Interaction These Days. Very top is from the post r/propaganda. This is a screenshot. It says classic Canadian on the top, 1942. And then underneath that it says, someone tell that to Trump. Underneath that it says, Trump made you mad? Don't need to throw a child's tantrum, but hey, it's Canada. What can you expect? And the commenter is like, excuse me, didn't mean to blaspheme your God. And then underneath that, the commenter is like, too bad he's your president. He thought he was really cooking with that answer, huh? Anyways, the individual replies back and says, not my president, I'm Canadian. So the lack of brain cells is killing me. I'm telling you, it's killing me, literally killing me. I think I'm losing years of my life. What did the comments have to say about this? I think this is worse than defaultism. I think they're alluding to Trump's bizarre desire to annex Canada. Ooh, I did hear about that. That is some scary shiznit. Imagine. I don't even want to imagine that. Why would you want to annex Canada? They didn't do nothing to us, man. Just leave them alone, bro. Leave them alone. Next comment says, I prefer to say he's not my president, not telling I'm not from the US right away. Then watch them get mad like, whether you like him or not, he's still your president, while still only replying, nope, he's not my president. It's pretty funny. It's funny because obviously there was this whole trend in America that, not my president. And of course, some people from other countries are like, he's like literally not my president. I'm from another country. Americans get so mad because they think that the other people that are saying Trump is not their president, they assume that they're Americans saying that, since there was a whole trend here saying that and stuff. So it is pretty funny that people are just like out of touch with that. And of course, our final comment, which says the he is your president thing is like watching an NPC talking. Literally, that is the fastest way to acquire a NPC interaction. Okay, if you want that in your life, just say those mystical words and you got all of that and more. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that is the end of this video. Let me know what you guys have experienced when it comes to us Americans and us applying our defaultism on y'all. If you guys have a story, let me know in the comments. I love reading them, so fill them things up. And if you have not subscribed to the channel or liked the video, you are fucking up.